The fire licked my work like it had a mouth and a taste. He held the match with 2 fingers and smiled at our friends. Then at the phones pointed at us. She needed a clean slate, my husband said, loud enough for the patio and the neighbors and the night. He dropped a stack of my prints into the steel drum and flames took the edges first, slow, then greedy. The air filled with a sweet, dark smell. The kind that says paper is turning into past. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I watched every inch of orange take what I had made. In the flames I saw the girl with a chipped tooth outside a corner store, the boy on his bike staring down rain, the old woman with the yellow scarf, smiling like the sun was private. The heat woke sweat at my back, but I kept my face as calm as a winter lake. Phones kept filming. The music kept trying to pretend it was still a party. Babe, he said, arm wide, voice smooth. It's just paper. Real artists are not precious. A real artist can make more. He looked at me like a host saving a show. His friends laughed the hard way, teeth first. A few guests looked down and hid their eyes in their cups. Someone whispered, "She'll thank him later." I lifted my glass and said, clear and low, "Real artists make proof." The line snapped the night like a twig. Heads turned. The phones paused. He blinked. I stepped closer to the fire and let the glow draw a line on my cheekbones. My pulse was loud in my ears. But I slowed it like I slow a shutter in low light. I took the metal lid from the patio table. "You're going to choke the block," I said, and set the lid on the drum to calm the flames. He reached to pull it off. I didn't let him. I met his eyes with mine. Quiet beat bold. He backed up one step. Another phone lowered. "Relax," he said, laugh thin now. "It's a statement." "It is," I said. And I recorded it. I tapped my pocket where my own phone had been filming from the moment he opened the box with a knife and made it part of the show. I had seen the lighter brand, the angle, the audience. I had seen the way he tilted his chin when he wanted applause. He turned to the crowd. "Come on. Tell her this is growth." Silence. The music stumbled. The night got tight around us. I took the hose from the wall and laid it near the drum. Not on it, water would hurt what I needed next. I watched the black flakes rise and fall, like snow that had changed its mind. Our neighbor with the soft laugh, Mara, was first to speak. "You should stop," she told him. "This is cruel." My husband raised his palms. "It's my house," he said. "It's our story." He looked at me for the old yes. I gave him the new no. I turned to the phones and said, "Film the fire if you want. But also film this, those are registered works. Those are insured items. Those are mine." I kept my voice steady. I thought each word before I let it touch air. When I say I stayed calm, it wasn't by chance. Calm was part of my plan. He scoffed. "Registered with who? Instagram?" He smirked for the laugh that didn't come. "Library of Congress," I said. "And the insurance rider you signed when you wanted the discount on the home policy. You said, whatever gets us the deal." It got me the proof. The quiet around us gained weight. His mouth stiffened. He reached for my arm. I shifted and he caught only air. "Don't be dramatic," he said, voice low now. "You'll make me look bad." "You did that already," I said. I watched the last sheet curl and fall. Small frames in his hand waited their turn. He held one up. It was the one of the little boy with the cracked helmet, the light in his eyes like a dare. "This one?" he asked, testing me. I didn't move. He dropped it into the mouth of heat. The crowd groaned like a single throat. He smiled, because he liked that sound. The lid glowed dull red. The smell turned heavy. I put the hose down and opened the metal with 2 fingers. The ash settled. The final print flamed inside. "There," he said. "Now you can start fresh." I stepped back from the drum, wiped my hands on a bar towel, and straightened my shoulders. I looked at the people, not at him. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Please save your videos. I will need copies." People blinked, as if I had asked for salt. A few nodded. Mara mouthed, "Yes." I smiled once, small and real. "I don't raise my voice," I added. "I raise receipts." Then I turned and walked inside to get the folder I had placed by the coffee maker 2 hours before he called the show a gift. I had known this was coming. I had been ready for weeks. I didn't learn about the fire on the patio that night. I learned it 3 Thursdays before. In a smaller way, when I noticed the box of old proofs had slid 3 inches on the closet shelf. He had taken one out, then put it back wrong. When I asked, he said, "I was just looking." The first time, that was almost fine. The second time the box moved, I looked closer at him. At dinner that week, his new friends with tight hair and loose hands said things like, "Fear is art's jailer," and, "If it's precious, it's weak." They looked at me when they said it, like I was the object. He laughed and nudged my knee. "Baby, listen," he said. "They're right." I smiled and cut my food into kind pieces. In my head, I was in a different room, peering at the lock on a door he didn't know I'd built. I had already registered my best work, every set, every date, months before. After a gallery manager lost 2 prints from a group show and called it part of the vibe, I filed the forms with names and sizes. I paid the fee with hands that remembered the weight of tips counted slow. I made a spreadsheet that said what lived where. I printed 2 copies and put them in 2 places. I uploaded my raw files to a cloud service under my maiden name and a password that had the wrong year on purpose. I made a small book of thumbnails, with notes about edits and rights. I also called my aunt, who works at a small law office and smells like mint tea and ink. How do I protect my work from a husband who calls it clutter? I asked her, not crying, because I save tears for rooms that don't echo. She said, "Dated registrations. Insurance rider. Photos of your storage. A list of titles with signatures. And if he wants to play with fire." A video camera pointed at the shelf. We laughed, because we are not made of glass. I took her list and made a plan. I called our insurance and added a rider for fine art and equipment. He signed the form when I put it by his keys. "You're so extra," he said, smiling at himself in the entry mirror. "Whatever gets us the discount." He didn't read the line that said owner, sole, me. He never read fine print unless it gave him a reason to pose. I also set a silent motion camera across from the closet door and another one in the garage. Cheap plastic, wide eyes. They saved to a hidden drive the size of a thumb. At the same time, I was already in talks with a magazine. It wasn't a glossy about parties, it was one that smells like paper and grit. The editor, Noor, had seen my series on the buses, Faces in Windows, Lights at Dawn. The way a city keeps its promises in small ways. "We want to run this," she had said over the phone. "But I want one more piece. I want the making of you. Not your marriage. Your map." I told her yes and sent her a folder of contact sheets and notes. Then, in our kitchen one morning, he said, "I'm doing a cleanse. Mental. Physical. We're getting rid of trash." He waved at the closet with the box. He looked at me to see if I would be cute and small. I rinsed a glass and said, "Trash is a choice word." He laughed and said, "Don't be dramatic." The night before the fire, he had invited people, work friends, influencers, his mother with the perfect hair, my cousin who still owed me $20. The neighbor with the shy dog. He set up a steel drum in the yard and called it the pit. I watched quietly from the kitchen window as he placed the box near it. Then posed for test shots, smoke machine already hissing like a snake learning English. In my bag, next to my wallet, I had 3 things: the folder of registrations, a flash drive with raws and edit logs, and a folded letter addressed to me from our insurer, confirming that in case of loss, they would pay me. I also had a spare set of keys to the storage unit I rented last month, where the negatives and master prints lived in the dark, wrapped like babies. When the first match flared, I had already turned on the camera near the patio door. When he held a print up for the crowd and said, "She takes so many. She won't miss a few," I had already sent Nor the last file she needed. When he said, "A real artist is never attached," I had already attached myself to a plan with dates and names and numbers. On the patio, his boss clapped him on the back. "This is content," he said, grinning. My husband beamed. My mother-in-law dabbed her eyes and said, "Growth is messy." My cousin shifted, uneasy. Mara watched me instead of the fire. I took a slow breath. I poured water into cups and handed them out to hands that were not mine. I wiped a small spill. My hands shook a little, then remembered themselves and stopped. The host sat, patient. The lid glowed. The ash rose. When he dropped the one of the girl with the yellow scarf, my throat tightened. I counted to 5 and let the number pass without making sound. In my mind I walked through my storage unit, past the metal racks, past the boxes with dates in black marker, to the drawer that held that Prince twin. Signed and wrapped in safe. I pictured the little camera's green light steady as a heartbeat. I pictured the scan of our insurance form. The one with his signature like a fish hook. I pictured Nor's email saying, "Press week is next month. If you can give me a cover, I'll hold the slot." I had given her the cover that morning. I watched the fire and didn't let it take me with the paper. Calm is not the absence of pain. It is the way I stacked facts until they could carry me. After the last print curled into its own smoke, I went inside to the coffee maker, where I had tucked the folder under a dish towel like a secret dinner roll. I pulled it out and placed it on the kitchen island. My husband came in behind me, still the host, still the man with the clap-along smile. He leaned on the counter, clearing his throat for the next line. The crowd drifted in, soft and guilty. The phones hovered like quiet birds around a pond. "Babe," he said, voice smooth again. "You're free now. It was holding you back." "Watch this," I said, and flipped the folder open. The first page, a spreadsheet with thumbnails, titles, dates, and registration numbers. The second, a letter from the Copyright Office, stamped. The third, the policy writer for fine art, his signature, the word sole owner, Ava in dark print. The fourth, a printout of an email thread with Nor, subject line, cover confirmation. The fifth, a small photo I had printed for me, not for him, my storage unit. Neat and boring, shelves labeled, boxes thick as winter sweaters. He glanced at the first page and laughed. "Cute," he said. "You made a menu." "An index," I said. I looked up and met his eyes. I had loved those eyes. I could still name their color by morning light and storm. Now they looked like a wall painted a shade too bright. "What is this?" his boss asked from the doorway, voice suddenly cautious. He leaned over the counter and read the words he didn't expect to see at a party. His lips moved on the Library of Congress. "That's fake," my husband said. "You can print anything." "True," I said. "So I keep the originals." I tapped the flash drive in my pocket. "And I keep email. And I keep time." Mara stepped forward, as if defense is a job a neighbor can apply for. "We saw him," she told the room. "He lit them." It was a ceremony, he said. Art. It was destruction, I said. And you filmed it. I nodded at the phones. A few people looked at their screens like they had touched something hot. He reached for the folder. I moved it 2 inches away, not fast. He looked at his hands as if they had betrayed him by being slower than mine. You won't ruin my night, he said. You won't make me the bad guy. I don't make you anything, I said. I make photos. And I make calls. I dialed the number on the letterhead. The adjuster, Tomas, answered on the second ring, soft voice, careful notes. I gave him the policy number, the date, the description. Fire, I said. Loss of registered works by spouse at a social event. Witnesses present. Video available. Police report pending. The words tasted like metal and fruit. He asked for photos. I told him I had 3 angles. He said a team would come in the morning. He reminded me to store the ash. Paper ash is evidence, he said. I smiled because the world is stranger and kinder than most people know. I'll keep it, I said. My husband's shoulders shifted from stage to corner. Are you serious? He asked. You're calling insurance? For trash? For titled works, I said. For listed items. For property you do not own. He flinched at the last line. He had liked the version where everything was ours when it suited him and mine when it was heavy. His mother stepped in with a tremble in her mouth. You can't do this to him, she said. You're partners. I said. Tonight he chose an audience, not a partner. He tried another door. I'll buy you a new camera, he said, reaching for a gift. I'll book you a trip. We'll make a new series. Better. Brighter. I already have a series, I said. I already have a cover. He laughed, the kind that hopes time will turn backwards. You? A cover? He looked around, inviting the room to laugh with him. The room stayed with me. Me, I said. I slid the printed email across the counter. He read the subject line out loud without meaning to. Cover confirmation. His boss stepped back like a man who doesn't want to be seen in a photo he can't crop. The old lie he liked best tried to come out. I push you, he said. I make you big. You make big fires, I said. I make big files. The room let out a small sound. My quote landed. I could feel it settle into mouths and pockets. It would be repeated. I didn't plan it, but I had earned it. I took the hose bucket to the yard and, with a wooden spoon, lifted ash into zip bags. The crowd parted the way people part for quiet emergency. The ash was soft, like winter on a windowsill. It clung to my fingers in a gray kiss. My husband followed, still talking to the air, to the phones, to himself. You're being crazy, he said. No one will care about paper. They care about stories. They will, I said. Because paper is law when it is signed. And stories are law when they are true. That night, after people left with the sound of their shoes apologizing to the sidewalk, after his mother swore at me in a voice she used to use for prayers, after my cousin hugged me with eyes wide, I locked my office door and put the bags of ash in a clear bin. I backed up my videos to 3 places. I set my camera by the window and took one picture of the empty steel drum. The sky behind it clear and blank. I wrote the time in a notebook and underlined it twice. I answered Noor's email. She had sent a single line while I was scooping ash. You good? I wrote back, yes. And better. She replied, press moves fast. Cover locked. He slept on the couch, mouth open, a hero in a show cancelled before it aired. I lay in our bed and stared at the ceiling where a small star from a stuck sticker still glowed faint. I thought about the first time he came to one of my shows. He had looked at the prints and then at me and said, "You're dangerous," like it was a promise. I thought about the last time he will ever say that. I turned and set my phone face down. I slept like a person who had packed her parachute weeks ago and finally pulled the cord. Morning found the patio quiet, the steel drum cold, and ash settled like gray snow across the bricks. I stood at the back door with a mug and let the scene press into me. The sun made the ash shine dull, like it still wanted to be paper. Inside, he lay on the couch with his arm over his eyes. The wounded hero in his own script. I didn't wake him. I had other calls to make. The adjuster, Tomas, arrived at 9 with a calm bag and a soft voice. He wore boots that knew backyards and eyes that knew lies. "May I?" he asked, nodding to the drum. I showed him the ash bin I'd packed, labeled with date and time. He smiled, the way pros smile when they see another pro. "This helps," he said. He took photos from 3 angles, placed a ruler near the edge of the drum, and wrote notes in tiny letters on a lined pad. Mara came over with her own phone and asked if he needed her clip. "Yes," he said. "Please email it. Original file. Not a repost." He asked for proof of ownership. I laid the folder on the patio table like a deck in a careful game, registration letters, my index, the policy writer. He read slowly, lips moving a little on the numbers. "This is very tidy," he said. "We will process fast." He turned to me. "I am sorry for your loss," he said, and he meant the art, not the fight. It mattered to me that he separated them. "Thank you," I said. "I still have the negatives. I still have the work." He nodded like a man who knows what it means to have backups for a heart. Inside, my husband rose from the couch, hair wild, voice rough. "What's going on?" he asked Tomas, as if this were a meeting he forgot to lead. "Documenting," Tomas said, polite. "You don't need to file a claim," my husband said to me. "We can handle this between us." "We handle the groceries between us," I said. "We handle the art by the book." He laughed once, but the sound had lost its muscles. "You're making me look like a monster," he said. "You did that," I said, keeping my tone flat. "I'm making a file." Tomas asked for a quiet moment with me. We stepped into the kitchen. "This is a covered loss under your rider," he said. "I do need a police report number for arson or vandalism, even if you don't press charges. It can be listed as domestic property destruction." The word arson made my stomach dip. I nodded anyway. "I'll call," I said. He handed me a card with a case number line already printed. "Also," he added, "move any remaining work to safe storage. Today." "I did," I said. "Before last night." He looked at me with a respect that warmed more than my coffee. "Good," he said. "You are in front of this." After Tomas left, I washed my hands and dialed the non-emergency line. The officer who answered spoke like a man late on sleep but rich on patience. I told him what happened, gave the address, and said the word evidence like I wanted it to stick to my file. A patrol unit rolled up 20 minutes later. The younger officer took photos of the drum and the ash bin. The older one asked me 2 questions that showed me he'd seen rooms like this before. "Were you scared?" he asked. "Did he threaten to hurt you?" "No," I said. He wanted applause. I pointed at the missing corners of my work. "He hurt that." The older officer looked at my husband, who was pacing the length of the patio like a man practicing a speech. "Did you light these?" he asked him, simple as a chore. "It was a performance," my husband said, chin out. "She'll thank me later." The officer wrote slowly. I need it on the record, he said. Yes or no? My husband's jaw worked. Pride won, as it usually did. Yes, he said. It's my house. It's registered work, I said. The older officer looked at my folder, then at me. Do you want to press charges? He asked. I thought about the cameras. I thought about the cover. I thought about Tomas's card and Noor's email and the way ash felt against my skin. I shook my head. Not today, I said. I want the report. He nodded. You can decide later, he said. He handed me a small white sheet with the number on it. Black as a road. I slid it into the folder and felt the weight change. He pulled me aside as he left. Be safe, he said, soft. Be smart. I lifted the folder a little. I am, I said. After the officers drove off, my mother-in-law called. She skipped hello. You're going to ruin his career, she said, voice sharp. A good wife protects. A good partner does not light a match, I said. And I'm not his PR. You think the world will believe you? She pressed. He has friends. I have files, I said. And I have a magazine. Silence. Then a hissed, what magazine? She didn't ask because she wanted to buy a copy. She asked like a person who wanted to keep a door from opening. You'll see, I said, and hung up. I texted Noor, claim filed. Report in. Files backed. Press schedule still good? She replied in a minute, we bumped you to the cover. We want to run the bus series and the new piece, How to Hold Your Work. I sat down at the kitchen table and let the words land. Bumped you to the cover. It felt like standing on a roof you fixed yourself and seeing the storm pass. My phone buzzed again. It was Aunt Lila from the law office, the one with mint tea and ink. You ready? She asked. She meant ready beyond the ash. Yes, I said. Come by at 2, she said. We'll file for property protection today. We'll talk about the other papers if you want to talk about the other papers. I do, I said, and my voice didn't break when I said it. I packed the folder, the flash drive, the ash bin, and a bottle of water. I changed into a soft sweater and pulled my hair back like a woman who has work. Before I left, I stepped into my office and touched the empty space where the box had been, like touching a scar that had turned into skin. I closed the door and felt it click in a way that fed me. He stood by the sink, eyes red, anger gone flat. So that's it? He asked. You're going to throw away what we had because you didn't like a party? I am going to throw away matches, I said. And I am going to keep my work. I made you, he said, desperate now. I gave you a life. You gave me a story, I said. I gave myself a map. He laughed and shook his head like a coach whose team missed an easy shot. You'll be back, he said. You need me. I picked up my keys. I needed a witness, I said. You gave me a crowd. I left without slamming the door. Outside, Mara sat on her stoop with a mug, watching the light move across the street. Need a ride? She asked. I smiled. I've got it, I said. But will you send me your clip? Already in your inbox, she said. She tipped her mug toward me. Take his show and make it a lesson, she added. That's the plan, I said. At Aunt Lila's office, the room smelled like paper and peppermint. She slid forms across the desk with the ease of a person who knows how to make air into law. We filed for temporary protection of property, which meant he couldn't touch my negatives, my cameras, my drives, my storage unit. We drafted a letter to him, firm and clean, listing what was mine under law and what was ours under habit. We drafted another letter I had hidden from myself until that hour, notice of separation. Not a fight. A fact. Are you sure? Aunt Lila asked, eyes kind but exact. I'm done with stages, I said. I'm done with fires. She nodded. Good, she said. We'll file on Monday. You will serve through a process server. You will not argue on text. I signed my name 5 times. Each time it felt more like a spine. On the way home, I stopped at the storage unit. The keypad beeped, the door lifted. The cool air met me like shade. I checked the boxes, the boy with the bike, the girl with the scarf, the bus windows, the cracked helmet. The series of hands at work, the set of city trees in rain. All there. All safe. I closed the metal door and pressed my palm against it until the steel took my heat. At dusk, Noor sent a mock-up of the cover. It was the bus window at dawn, a face in reflection, the city stretched thin by light. Across it, in simple type, the title, Hold. My name sat below it. Spare and right. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned in the good way. I sent it to Aunt Lila. I sent it to Mara. I sent it to myself. I did not send it to him. He texted at 8. We should fix this. Come sit with me. We can rewrite what people saw. He still believed the audience was his to steer. I wrote back one line, people saw the truth. Now they will see the proof. He didn't reply. That night I didn't fit the old bed. I took a blanket to my office floor and lay down near my desk. The boards were warm. The room felt like a friend who doesn't make you talk. I slept like a person whose plan had teeth and, finally, a cover. In the morning, before the city shook its shoulders awake, I walked to the corner store and bought 3 copies of the paper that runs on Fridays. On the second page, a short piece sat with my name, local photographer to cover national magazine. The photo was an older one of me, light behind me, camera in hand. The caption read, "She keeps receipts." It made me laugh out loud. The clerk asked what was funny. I showed him the line. He said, "Good," and handed me a free coffee. On the house. Keep the proof. I walked home through a street that smelled like bread and whetstone. And for the first time in months I felt light in my chest that wasn't a trick. The magazine would come out in 2 weeks. The claim would pay next month. The letters would file on Monday. The ashbin sat labeled on a shelf like a small, heavy chapter. The revenge I had planned wasn't a knife or a scream. It was a cover, a claim, a stamp, a door that closed and another that opened. It was the simple, beautiful irony that the fire he lit to erase me had lit a beacon I would walk toward and he could not follow. 2 weeks moved like a train I could hear before I saw. Papers filed. Calls logged. Boxes labeled. The house felt like a museum where the wrong plaque sat under the wrong painting, so I started to swap them, my gear into cases by the door. My books into crates, my sweaters into a suitcase with a working zipper. I didn't slam drawers. I slid them shut and listened for the steady click that meant I still owned my hands. He tried new scripts each morning. We were drunk, he said on Monday. We were inspired, on Tuesday. You're going to look petty, on Wednesday. Thursday he tried quiet, which was the only one that almost hurt. He made eggs. The way he did when he wanted us to be the couple from year 1. The yolks sat in a neat pool. He pushed a plate toward me. Please, he said. Sit. I stood and ate beside the sink like a worker on a short break. The plate clinked once when I set it down. He flinched as if I'd thrown it. At noon a process server knocked. He was polite, wore a tie too short and a grin too long. For you, he said, handing my husband the envelope like a baton. My husband held it by the corner, as if it were a bee that might sting if he let it rest. He read the first page, then the second, then looked up at me as if the lines could be argued with a charming mouth. "You don't want this," he said. "I already have it," I said. He stood in the doorway with the afternoon cutting him into two tones, one side lit, one side shadow, both sides real. "This will ruin me," he said. "No," I said. "It will stop you from ruining me." His mother called within the hour with a tremble she sharpened into a knife. "You can't serve someone in his own kitchen," she said. "I served him 100 chances," I said. "This is the last one with a stamp." That evening, I took the ash bin to Aunt Lila's office for storage. We labeled the lid with the case number and a date. She put it on a shelf next to boxes with names I didn't know. "We keep these like people keep wedding dresses," she said, "right? Proofs of choice." On the 7th day after the fire, Noor sent the final cover. My name sat under hold with a calm I had worked for. Inside, the essay ran long enough to let breath in: buses at dawn, the yellow scarf, the cracked helmet, how to register, how to insure. How to draw a map of your work when someone wants to call it clutter. We added a sidebar with steps: date it, file it, photograph it, insure it, back it up, tell one person you trust. At the bottom, Noor insisted on one line in bold that made me both proud and shy: "I don't raise my voice, I raise receipts." The night before it hit stands, I slept at Mara's. Her couch smelled like orange peel and laundry soap. We talked very little and scrolled not at all. She handed me tea and an extra pillow. "Tomorrow," she said, "you buy every copy. And you don't apologize to the clerk for being happy." Morning came with the hum of fridges and the squeak of the shop's metal gate. I walked to the corner store with the sun at my shoulder. The magazine sat near the drinks. There was Hold, and there was my bus, and there, small and steady, my name. The clerk saw my face bloom and smiled like he'd been waiting all week. "There she is," he said. He thumped the stack into a neat brick. "How many?" "5, I said, then heard my aunt's voice in my head: "You are allowed joy." 10, I corrected. He bagged them like they were warm bread. Outside, a bus rolled by. In the window, a woman looked up from her phone and saw me holding the cover. She tapped the glass, pointed at the magazine, and gave me a thumbs up through the reflection. I laughed, a small pure sound I didn't need to swallow. I brought one copy to the police station and gave the sergeant the case number and the article. "It has the timeline," I said. He held it like mail that made his day smarter. "Good work," he said. "If you want to add a statement, do it now while your edges are sharp." I sat at a metal desk and wrote 5 sentences that used verbs and dates and none of his adjectives. I signed my name, the new spine still warm. Then I went home to pack more boxes and found him at the table with the magazine open to the cover. His thumb on my name like he was testing its weight. He looked up. The old joke reached for him and found a locked door. "Congratulations," he said, flat. "Thank you," I said, and meant it for Noor, for Aunt Lila, for Mara, for Tomas, for every bus that waited at a red light while I found my shot. He flipped to the essay and skimmed until he hit the sidebar. His mouth twisted. "You turned our life into a tutorial," he said. "I turned my damage into a manual," I said. "There's a difference." "You made me the villain," he said. "I didn't name you," I said. "I named tools." He tossed the magazine back on the table like it had burned him. "You'll be forgotten next week," he said. "Then I'll still have my files," I said. He stood, pushed his chair in with a scrape that tried to be a scar, and walked to the sink. "Everyone thinks you're brave because you wrote it down," he said. "Writing is easy. Living with me is hard." "I know," I said. And the softness in my voice surprised us both. He turned, defense falling for 1 second, and I saw the boy he had been. Burning ant hills to test the universe. I also saw the man he chose to be, calling that science. A ping interrupted us. My phone. Nor again, press wants to syndicate the essay. We'll protect your words. Are you okay with your face in the interview? I typed, yes. My face belongs to me. Another ping. The adjuster, claim approved. Payment in 3 to 5 days. See details attached. I scanned the email, saw the number, and felt my ribs loosen in a way no hug could do. Money was not revenge, it was oxygen. It meant I could breathe while I moved my life. I spent the afternoon moving. Mara carried books. My cousin carried a plant I had kept alive by accident. The neighbor kid carried a box of cords like treasure. I carried frames without pictures, because I would fill them again. We laughed at an old photo of my father wearing a shirt that said "Pay the artist" in a font that looked like a frown. We wrapped it twice. At 4, a florist down the block stuck her head in our door with a bouquet and a grin. We saw, she said, pointing to the magazine open on the table. Take these. The color is the same as your bus. The petals matched the dawn on the cover almost by magic. I put them in a jar and set them on the counter where the ash had been. At 6, my mother-in-law arrived without warning, her hair a helmet, her mouth a line. She held the magazine like evidence in a court built only for her. You've humiliated us, she said. People called me. You can hang up, I said. You always had to be seen, she said. He tried to help you see yourself. He tried to make me disappear, I said. This says I'm here. She turned to her son. Grabbed his wrist like she was checking a pulse. Fix it, she ordered. He pulled away, slow. I can't, he said, not looking at me. It's printed. The word landed between them like a new language. Printed. Permanent without being cruel. Visible without being rabid. The magazine cover did a thing my voice never could for his family. It translated my proof into their gospel. Ink. Paper. Another mother's son had chosen the match. The page said so in a way that did not scream. She stared at the cover as if it were a small god that just blinked. Then she set it down and left without slamming the door. I wasn't happy. I was free. As the sun leaned, Nor called. We didn't talk about numbers. We talked about timing, safety, and joy. Do you want to share the ash photo? She asked. Only if it feeds you. No, I said. I like that part quiet. The cover is enough. Then the cover is enough, she said. One more thing, comments will come. Don't read the ones that make your lungs tight. I won't, I said. I'll be outside. I stepped onto the porch. The neighbor dog sniffed my shoe, approved, and lay down like a loaf. Across the street. The bus stop held a small crowd, the end of day shift and the beginning of night shift. A woman held her child and pointed at a cloud shaped like a boat. 2 teens traded headphones. A man in a fluorescent vest read my cover like a map. He nodded once, put it under his arm, and stood when the bus sighed and knelt. The doors opened. Faces, glass, light. My city again. From the doorway. My husband watched me watch them. You're going to leave, he said, as if saying it might turn it to vapor. I am, I said. What will you do without me? He asked, but the question had lost its shape. It was a balloon with no air. Make more, I said. Teach others to hold. He tried one last key in a lock he no longer owned. You'll miss me. I will miss who you were supposed to be, I said. But I won't miss who you performed. He closed his mouth. He was learning, at last, that silence can be a mirror. Night came like slow ink. I stacked the last box, taped the last flap, and wrote office in thick letters. I put the magazine on top. I wrote my new address on a sticky note and put it in my wallet beside the photo of the bus at dawn. I washed my favorite mug, dried it with a clean towel, and set it upright in the box labeled kitchen, open first. Before bed, I took one copy of the magazine out to the patio where the steel drum sat cold and dumb. I set the cover on its rim and took a single photo, ash scar, glossy paper, my name, that morning's light. I didn't post it. I sent it to myself. Then I slid the magazine back into its sleeve. In the morning, I would carry boxes down the steps and into the small studio that waited 2 neighborhoods over, a room with a wide window, a lock I would change, and shelves that would be labeled before noon. I would pin the cover on the wall above my desk, not as a trophy, but as a compass. I would brew coffee, open my laptop, and write a lesson plan called Hold for the workshop the magazine asked me to teach, how to protect your work from people who call it trash and your heart from people who call it love when they mean control. I lay on the couch at Mara's again, felt the cushion shape to me, and let the quiet come in like tide. Revenge had not emptied me. It had cleared a room. In that room, I could set a table, pull out a chair, and invite the person I had almost left behind, the girl who made buses look holy, the woman who registered her own light, the artist who didn't raise her voice because she had learned a better sound, paper sliding into a file, a stamp hitting ink, a page turning, a door closing, a bus kneeling, a city keeping time. The studio I rented sat above a bakery that woke before buses. When I climbed the stairs the first morning, the smell of bread and heat met me like a promise I could hold. The key turned clean. The room opened wide, white walls, wood floor. One big window with a view of a tree that kept its own counsel. I set the first box down and stood in the light. My heartbeat slowed the way a shutter slows to drink dawn. I unpacked methodically, like a person laying down a new alphabet. Books by the window. Lenses in a drawer lined with soft cloth. Drives in a lockbox with 2 keys, one on my ring, one in Aunt Lila's desk. The magazine cover went on the wall with blue tape, not a frame. I wanted to hear paper breathe when I walked past it. Mara carried a crate labeled kitchen, open first, and set a mug on the sill. The baker says you have coffee, she said. And a cat that sits on the roof and makes faces. As if on cue. A gray head popped up outside the window and blinked at me like an inspector who approves. I saluted. The cat yawned and left. By noon, the studio looked like a life. My camera bag hung on a hook. My notebook lay open on the desk with a line I had written in thick pen, protect the work. Protect the worker. I taped a small sign near the door, ask before you touch. I sent Nor the selfie she asked for, me in the window, unposed, hair tied back, hands in pockets. The cover on the wall like a calm flag. I took the bus to the magazine office at 2. The editor's floor creaked in a friendly way. Nor met me in the lobby, her smile warm, her eyes sharper than any lens. She hugged me quick. You good? She asked. I am, I said. And ready. She led me into a conference room with glass walls and a whiteboard full of arrows. The art director pinned my cover alongside other past issues. My bus face met a stack of ocean waves, a portrait of a nurse, a close-up of rough hands fixing a pipe. I liked the company. Nor slid a contract across the table. We want a column, she said. Every other month. Short, clear, useful. We'll pay on time. We'll protect your words. I read. The clauses were neat. The rights were fair. The money was honest. I smiled. Yes, I said, and signed. I'll call it hold. Good, she said. Your first piece will teach registration like a recipe. We shot a short interview in the studio downstairs, me at a table, no drama, one stool. The producer said, "Tell me about the fire," and I said, "We won't start there. We'll start with a file." We filmed hands, my hands labeling a folder, placing a print, opening a drawer. I looked into the camera and said, "Make a list. Name your things. Date your things. If someone calls it clutter, you call it a catalog." The producer sighed, like she'd been carrying a heavy bag, and finally set it down. At home. Boxes waited by the door for the last trip. He was there, of course, circling the dining table, touching its edge like he might copy its grain into his next version of the truth. He watched me lift a box and said, "They'll tire of you. Everyone does." "They hired me," I said. "I hired me first. I can apologize," he tried. "We can film a video. We can call it lessons learned. People love arcs." "No," I said. "They love receipts." He looked past me at the window, at the world that kept going without his script. "You ruined my pitch," he said, finally naming the only god he believed in. The guys at work pulled the plug on my campaign. They said I created brand risk. "I didn't ruin anything," I said. "You lit a match. You sent them the magazine," he accused. "I didn't need to," I said. "They can read." He rubbed his eyes and laughed, short and dry. "Do you know the worst part?" he asked. "That you did it to yourself?" I said. "That I thought you'd never leave," he said. I set the box down and looked at him until he had to look back. "I left the night I watched you smile for the flame," I said. "Today I am just taking my things." He swallowed, the first honest movement I'd seen on his face since the drum cooled. "You were supposed to be softer," he said. "I was supposed to be seen," I said. "By me." He stepped aside. I carried the box to the car. Mara moved around him like a river around a rock. On the porch, my mother-in-law stood flag-still with a plastic smile, like a woman in a resume photo. "You are dramatic," she said. "Good men make mistakes. Good women keep records," I said, and kept walking. The next days spread like wet paint, slow, messy, full of color. The claim paid and let me breathe. I bought a second camera body so my workshop students could shoot with me. I rented a small light kit. I paid Mara back for the couch with a month of bakery bread and a framed photo of her hands holding lemons. On Wednesday night, I taught my first hold class in the studio. 10 people. All different mirrors, a baker with flour in her hair, a teen with chipped nail polish and a notebook that said ideas, a nurse with tired eyes that still knew how to see straight, a street musician with scars on his knuckles, an auntie who made quilts that told stories with thread, a mechanic with a thumb scar and a soft voice, a teacher, a bus driver, a dancer, a kid from the skate park who wanted to build a zine. We sat in a circle with copies of the magazine on our laps. I started with the line that had become a small banner under my ribs. "I don't raise my voice," I said. "I raise receipts." They laughed and then wrote it down. I handed out a simple kit, a 3-ring binder with tabbed sections, titles, dates, photos of storage, contracts, insurance, backups. We filled the first pages together. I showed them how to photograph a painting against a plain wall with a coin for scale, how to write a description anyone could read, how to make a list on paper and upload it to the cloud. We made registration feel like a recipe and insurance feel like a seatbelt. Halfway through, the musician raised his hand. "What if the person who loves you tries to change the way your work looks?" he asked. "Tell them you'll change the light, not the lines," I said. "Then write it down." He nodded like a person who had just been handed the right wrench. At the end, the bus driver stayed behind. He took a deep breath like he'd been underwater. My son paints, he said. He hides his canvases in his closet because his stepfather calls them mess. I'm going to buy him a binder. I'm going to show him this page. Thank you. Bring him next time, I said. We'll label his mess. When everyone left, I stood in the middle of the room and let the silence touch me. It was not empty. It was full of new labels, fresh ink. Light trapped on paper in the right ways. The reversal came 2 days later like a tide that pretends it isn't rising. His company announced a rebrand pause. His project vanished from the site. He came to the studio door in a shirt too crisp and eyes too loud. He knocked like a guest at his own party. I did not invite him in. They used your line, he said, angry and impressed at once. We don't raise our voice, we raise receipts. They printed it in the ethics memo. They took my budget and turned it into training. Good, I said. You stole my future, he said. You burned my past, I said. The present chose. He looked past me at the cover. At the binder kits stacked for the next class, at the window with the tree. The cat blinked at him like a judge who was over it. He exhaled. I didn't think you had it in you, he said. The plan. I did, I said. Because you trained me. You made me practice carrying proof. He half smiled then. A flash of the man from year one, the man who used to run his finger along the edge of a print and say, you caught it. If I say I'm sorry, he tried, can we do a last shot? For the feed. Full circle. Closure. No, I said. Closures don't need cameras. I nodded toward the stair. Take care of yourself. He stared at the steps like they were a mountain built just for him. You'll regret not forgiving me, he said. It didn't land. His words had no coat anymore, they shivered on contact with air. I forgave you the night I wrote the dates, I said. I forgave you when I turned your fire into a cover. Forgiveness is not going back. He left. Footsteps heavy on wood. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it for a second, like prayer without an altar. Then I pulled the next box of binders onto the table. Work saves. Work that protects saves twice. That evening, Nor sent a link, the interview had gone live. Comments bloomed like wildflowers and weeds. I obeyed my own rule and didn't read. I sat in the window, held the warm cup, and watched buses kneel. The bakery closed with a soft thump. The cat cleaned its paw with holy focus. Lights clicked on in apartments across the street, square frames with small stories, someone folding a shirt, someone watering a plant. Someone dancing alone to a song the radio forgot. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, my daughter showed me your cover. I burned her sketchbooks last year when I was angry. I am buying her a new binder and a lockbox tomorrow. I am sorry. I stared at the screen until the words became water and then became air. I wrote back, thank you. Start with a date. Start with a list. Ask before you touch. I turned off the lamp. The studio held me like a boat holds its river. I lay down on the rug and stared at the ceiling. Where a small crack looked like a line I might photograph if the light did the right thing. I fell asleep in my clothes, smug in no way. Empty in no way, full of the kind of tired that means you did your job and nothing more was needed from you today. Outside, the city kept time. Inside, the cover watched over me without asking for anything back. The courthouse smelled like dust and deodorant. Papers whispered. Shoes clicked. Names rose and fell like tides you could set a clock by. I sat on a wooden bench with Aunt Lila's folder on my lap and watched the clerk's hands do small miracles, stamp, slide, nod, repeat. Silence isn't forgiveness, I told myself. Steady as a metronome. It's focus. The line kept my spine straight while I waited for my number to blink. When they called my name, I stood and walked to the window. The clerk, silver hair pulled tight, eyes kind but busy, looked over the petition we had filed: property protection, temporary support, access schedule for the house, while I moved the last of my things. She stamped the lines in a rhythm that calmed the animal in my chest. "Next hearing in 2 weeks," she said. "You'll get a notice." I thanked her like she had held a door in a storm. Outside, the air felt clean, like the sky had been rinsed. I texted Nora a photo of the stamped page just because we had become the kind of women who send each other proof when the world turns right. She replied with a lemon and a gavel. My phone buzzed again. "Tomas from insurance, funds released. Check your account." I opened the bank app and saw the number settle in like a chair I could finally sit in. Oxygen. Rent. Time. My work didn't need to beg. On the way back to the studio, I stopped at the storage unit. The metal door rolled up and the cool inside greeted me like shade. I checked the labels: hands, buses, rain, scarf, helmet, new work. I added 2 fresh boxes: hold workshop, kits and Ava, contracts. The black marker bled a little on the cardboard. It looked like ink and promise. By noon I was back upstairs. The bakery sent up 2 still warm rolls wrapped in wax paper with a note from the baker's son: "Congrats on your cover. Keep the light." I tore one in half and ate standing by the window, salt and heat turning my mouth into a small party that didn't need cameras. Then the email came with a subject line that made my stomach go cold and then warm again because I was ready for this: demand to cease defamation. It was from a law firm my husband's company hired when they wanted teeth without blood. The letter used words like false narrative and reputational harm and asked me to refrain from further public statements. They attached screenshots of the cover and my quote. They CC'd my husband, his boss, and the PR person who called conflict content. I forwarded it to Aunt Lila. She called before I could take a second breath. "Congratulations," she said. "You've graduated to the stage where people who are wrong hire fonts to scare you." "What do we do?" I asked. "We send a 9-page reply," she said, cheerful. "We attach the video 3 neighbors shot, the officer's report, the policy rider, the registrations. The email where his mother called your work trash, and the invoice from the steel drum company if they were fool enough to pay with a card. We mention anti-slap. We CC the PR person because she needs a paragraph to read at her next ethics meeting. We wrote it together at my desk." The cat outside the window blinked approval every few minutes. Aunt Lila typed like piano, fast and precise. I added the exhibits, numbered and calm. At the top of page 1 she wrote a sentence that made me want to buy her flowers forever: "Truth is a complete defense. And our client has receipts." She used my line like a scalpel. Poetic irony fit inside a header. I hit send. 10 minutes later, a reply arrived from the PR person alone: "We are evaluating." An hour after that, another email from her: "We are pausing our outreach. We regret any distress." Distress. A threadbare word. I took it like an involuntary flinch. Noor called in the afternoon to ask if I wanted to license one photo for a small museum show on paper trails. It's about how things last because someone decided. They should, she said. I chose the shot of the boy with the cracked helmet, unburned twin, light like a dare, and the bus window at dawn. We wrote a contract in 6 lines and 3 fees. My name would be on the wall without anyone's mouth near it. At 4. Mara texted, "He's at your old place with a camera crew." My chest went cold for 1 second, then the training kicked in. I grabbed the folder marked house access and the stamped page from the clerk, and I took the bus because the bus steadies me like nothing else. Through the window. The city wore end of day, faces slackening, shoulders easing, glass turning honey. On the sidewalk outside the house, I found him on the front steps. Two guys from his office pointing their phones like they were about to film a product reveal. He wore regret like a shirt, the kind you buy too small so people can see the shape of it. "We just want to capture a statement," he said. Voice pitched for the lens. "We're all about learning in public." "Learning happens after listening," I said. "Put the phones away." He looked at the stamped page in my hand and sneered. "You think that paper makes you strong?" he said. "No," I said. "I do. The paper makes you behave." I held it up so his crew could read: temporary support, property protection, access schedule. One of them lowered his phone. The other followed. Like dominoes finally meeting gravity. He tried to walk past me into the house. I stepped to the side with the precision of a person taught by a tree how to lean. "Not today," I said. "My schedule is posted. You get Tuesday and Thursday next week between 10 and 2. Bring a list. We'll check boxes." He laughed and it sounded like a car trying to start in winter. "Who are you?" he asked. "You were never like this." "I was always like this," I said. "You only liked me when my rules served your show." "For once." He didn't have a line. He sat down on the step like a boy who missed his bus and decided the sidewalk could hold him. The crew drifted away without footage. It was the cleanest reversal I could have asked for, the tool he loved most, a camera. Turning into a witness against him and then falling silent because the story he wanted didn't exist. Inside, I packed the last of the kitchen bowls that matched because I had made them match. The mug with a hairline crack I used on mornings when weakness felt like a friend you still had tea with. 3 small plates that made an old table look like luck. I left the cheap steel knife he loved. He could keep that. I left a note on the counter with the access schedule and the items we would split later with lawyers in a room without cameras. Mara helped me carry a box to the car. "You handled that like a judge," she said. "Like a clerk," I said. "Judges get speeches. Clerks get stamps." We laughed. The kind that lifts grief a little without lying about its weight. Back at the studio, I found an envelope under the door. No return address. Inside, a handwritten note in a neat hand. "I burned my son's composition notebook last year because it had rap lyrics. I thought I was saving him. Your cover made me cry in a grocery store aisle. I bought him a new one and we wrote the date together. Thank you." I sat on the floor and let the quiet hold me while something inside me unclenched. Revenge heals nothing by itself. But consequence paired with clarity, sometimes that opens a small gate and lets light in. That night I taught hold again. The bus driver returned with his son. A thin boy with paint under his nails and a shyness he'd taped over with sarcasm. He sat in the back at first, hood up, then in the middle. Hood down, then at the table, binder open. We labeled 3 canvases with titles he liked and a date that belonged to him. We took photos of each. Coin for scale. We uploaded them to a folder with his name and a password he chose. When we finished, he tapped the page with his finger. "Feels like metal," he said, surprised. "Like it won't tear." "It's paper that learned a trick," I said. "Like you." After class, the mechanic lingered as people filed down the stairs. He held his copy of the magazine like a manual and said, "My dad saved packing slips. He said loss can't boss a receipt." I didn't get it till now. "Your dad was a poet," I said. He smiled, small, stunned, as if I had handed him a medal he didn't know he'd earned. When everyone left, I took the check from the insurer and put half into a high-yield account with my name only, a quarter into rent for the year. A piece into an emergency fund for students who needed a binder but couldn't afford meat that week, and the rest into a line item I named light, printer ink. Frames, bus fare, bread, tea, and the time it takes to write good sentences. Money isn't love. It's clean air. I opened the window and let cold come in because I could warm the room. Before sleep, I got one last message, forwarded by Noor, from a museum registrar I had never met. We saw your cover. We are updating our artist agreements. We added a clause, no alteration or destruction of artist's work without written consent. Thank you. I sent it to Aunt Lila. She replied, write the rules you needed and watch the world borrow them. I lay on the rug and stared at the blue tape holding the cover to the wall. It had started to curl at one corner. I smoothed it down with my thumb. Not a trophy. A compass. Through the window, a bus sighed and knelt. A boy with a cracked helmet climbed on with his backpack and a binder under his arm. My name on a page was nothing next to that. I slept heavy and woke early, ready to teach a new line. If they move the fire to your door, move the file to theirs. The kind of revenge that builds a future is just another name for policy. And policy, I had learned, is how artists make the world meet them with respect instead of applause. 2 weeks later I stood in a hallway the color of old paper, waiting for my name to be called into a room with one flag and 2 clocks. The bench under me had carved initials that looked like tiny maps people made when they needed to feel larger than a day. I held Aunt Lila's folder like a steering wheel and watched my husband pace 3 tiles left, 3 tiles right, like a metronome set to wrong time. He wore a suit that tried to make his jaw look kinder. His mother sat beside him, spine iron, eyes glass. Breathe like a bus, Aunt Lila whispered. Slow in. Slow out. I did. The hallway smell, ink, dust, nerves, turned into something I could live inside for an hour. We went in. The judge had hair like a storm cloud and a voice that did not rush. She said our names, read the case number, and asked for facts as if facts were chairs. I set mine down one by one: registered works, insurance rider, ash gathered, police report, claim paid, separation notice. Property protection. Each had a date. Each had a page. Each page had a quiet spine. My husband's lawyer tried to make the night a poem. A performance. An act of marital support, an artist's rebirth, he said, moving his hands like he could shape the air. The judge did not blink. Did he light matches? She asked. Yes, the officer said from the witness chair, flipping his notebook to the right line. He confirmed. The lawyer pivoted. My client regrets, then he can say that sentence, the judge said. Does he? She looked over the glasses that had slipped down her nose. My husband looked at the cameras that weren't there and then at the floor. I regret the way it looked, he managed. The judge nodded, marked something with a pen that made a clean sound, and turned to me. Do you want a protective order beyond property? She asked. I want quiet, I said. And a schedule that holds. She gave me both. 2 afternoons a week for him to pack his things. No filming on the property. No posting old images of my work. No using my name for a project or a pitch. Temporary support. Because the house and the drum had lived on my comm for years. We will review in 90 days, she said. File your lists. End on time. I could have hugged her for that last line. As we left, his mother swept up to me like a cold front. You embarrassed us, she said. Not new, but with less breath. No, I said. He did. I labeled it. She looked past me at the flag, the clocks, the seal on the wall. For a second I thought she might cry. She didn't. She nodded once, like a woman who has lost a case and hates the law for being a mirror. Outside, the sun hit the courthouse steps at an angle that made everyone look taller. Noor texted a screenshot. Your column hit. They've added a registration 101 link at the top. Our site is in the good kind of traffic. I sent her a photo of the order with the case number blurred and wrote, "We got a schedule." And quiet. Back at the studio, I found a line down the block. "Not for me. For the bakery." Still, 3 people at the end held my magazine. One was a girl with a camera that cost more than her shoes. "Can you sign this?" she asked, shy firm. I signed my name small in the corner of the cover where the bus window met dawn. She watched my hand like the pen was a wand. "How do I keep people from taking my work?" she asked. "You can't," I said. "But you can make the taking cost them more than it gives." I handed her a binder from the stack on the shelf. "Start with a list." In the afternoon, I met with the museum registrar. The room smelled like clean glass in years. She walked me through the incoming log, title, dimensions, medium, condition, rights. My name slotted into their system like a puzzle piece that had been waiting for a long time. "We added your destruction clause," she said softly. "I wish we had it last year." "What happened last year?" I asked. "A collector tried to age a piece with a torch and called it collaboration," she said. We had nothing to point to but a sigh. She tapped the new clause with her nail. "Now we have nouns." On the way out, I passed a case holding a child's diary from the 1930s. A little card read, "Kept. Dated. Found." I stood a minute longer than I needed to and let the words be a blessing. The next morning, the reversal scene I hadn't planned arrived in the form of an email to my husband from his company's legal department. He forwarded it to me by accident. Or pride made his thumb clumsy. "Effective immediately, your access to creator assets is suspended pending completion of ethics training and review of no destruction policy. External filming on company property is prohibited without written consent from all parties." They had copied the clause from my museum contract and pasted it into their rules. The very tool he used, public spectacle, had turned into the door that shut him out. He showed up at my studio door before noon, face raw, arrogance peeled back to embarrassment. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like a man who finally met gravity. "They made me sign your sentence," he said, holding up the memo as if it were a foreign letter. "No destruction without written consent." "It's a good sentence," I said. "Did you send it to them?" he asked. "No," I said. "The world reads." He stared at the cover on my wall. "You won," he said, flat. "I healed," I said. "Winning is for games." "Then why does this hurt so much?" he asked, finally honest. "Because consequences feel like burns when you've lived near fire," I said. He put his hand on the doorframe like he needed a tree. "I'm sorry," he said, the word small, true, and late. "I know," I said. "I hope you use it." He nodded, stepped back, and didn't ask to come in. We were done writing each other, and somehow the page didn't feel cruel. It felt turned. That night, I taught hold again. The class filled with new faces and one surprise, my mother-in-law, hair softer, mouth less blade. She stood at the door, uncertain as a student on day one. "I brought my church choir's music," she said, lifting a folder. We never wrote dates. The new director threw last year's pile away. "I want to fix the next set." "Sit," I said, and pulled a chair. She did. She listened. She labeled. She frowned at her own past and then smiled at her own new page. When we finished, she lingered by the window and looked at the cover like a person who finally sees the picture right side up. "When he was small, he drew our house on fire," she said softly. We laughed. Her eyes shone without falling. "We should have asked why." "You can ask now," I said. "You can ask him today." She nodded. "I will. After class." The bus driver and his son stayed to show me a canvas painted in blues that learned how to be sky. We labeled it Sky Learned and wrote the date. The boy took a photo of the back, coin for scale, hand steady as if he were holding a bird he trusted not to bolt. On Friday, the museum hung the cracked helmet portrait and the bus window side by side. People stood in front of them without selfies, reading the small cards with the claws. A janitor paused with his cart, read the line out loud, and said to no one, "Say it twice in a room. Maybe they'll listen." I wrote the sentence down for my next column, "Say it twice in a room." Saturday brought a message from Tomas, insurer, adding documented artist-writer template to agent training. Your file used as case study, name removed. Keep receipts. I laughed. Alone and full. The adjuster had become a quiet evangelist. The fire had turned into a syllabus. On Sunday, I walked to the pocket park near the studio. A chalk sign on the path read "Ask First," written by a hand I recognized from my class. A girl with a chipped tooth drew a bus with a thick line for the window. Her father watched, patient. "I saw your article," he said. "We did the binder." She made the list. He looked at the drawing like a man inspecting a bridge he just trusted with his weight. "She's real," he said, not to me, to himself. I sat on the bench and let the week exhale. The cover had done its work. The court had set the clock. The company had learned a line. The museum had written a rule. The binder kits were almost gone, I'd order more on Monday. My husband had apologized to a door frame, which was as close as we'd get to a prayer together. His mother had labeled music. A boy had titled "The Sky." I thought of the first night, the match. The drum, the phones, the way ash looks like memory if you let it, the way paper looks like law if you date it. I had not saved every picture. I had not saved every love. But I had saved the part of me that makes both. And I had taught others to save theirs without asking anyone for a stage. As the sun slid, a bus sighed and knelt. The door opened. A woman stepped down with a magazine folded to the center, my column circled in pen. She held it up from the curb and called. "You wrote the recipe." I stood and bowed a little, laughing, and called back, "Don't forget the coin for scale." She saluted and kept walking. The paper tucked under her arm like a slice of armor. I went back upstairs, brewed tea, and wrote the next column title at the top of a blank page, "Rest is Allowed." I wrote the first line under it, "You do not owe your work to the fire to prove it strong." I set the pen down and looked at the cover on my wall. It wasn't a trophy. It was a compass. It pointed me to rooms where proof replaced noise, where policy replaced panic, where a calm voice could carry a whole block. Peace did not feel like silence. It felt like a staff desk, a dated page, a binder with tabs, a bus that keeps its schedule even on hard mornings. A city that learns one small rule at a time until it has a different face in the window. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and let the studio go dark around me, not empty at all, just full of quiet things that would still be there when I opened the door again. The magazine sold out at the corner store by noon, and the clerk taped a handwritten sign to the cooler, "Restock at 4." I walked past it on my way to the bus and felt a small lift under my ribs, the way a kite must feel when the wind finally remembers it. The city moved like a line of steady hands, trash lifted, gates rolled, a teacher pressed her palm against a student's head to measure a year. I took out my notebook and wrote the day's list in fat letters: museum talk, binder order, call with Nor, court copy, rest. I underlined rest twice like a dare. At the studio, I found a padded envelope on the floor. Inside, a clipped note from the museum registrar: "We sold 3 catalogs with your clause circled." Parents asked for a copy for their kids' school. She had included a stack of blank forms labeled Inventory Basics with my byline at the bottom. I set them on the shelf next to the binders and laughed alone because the thing I once called boring had turned into a kind of spell. Noon brought the museum talk. The auditorium was small, the kind of room where whispers take up little space and facts take up a lot. I stood at a podium that didn't try to be holy and told the story the way a map tells a trip: marks, dates, distances, fuel stops. I did not say his name. I did not show ash. I said, if someone tells you fire makes you pure, hand them a bucket and a registration form. A girl in the front row wrote that line down like it was a new planet. The Q&A slid toward tears twice. I steered it back toward tools. Here is how you file, I said, and the room breathed like it had been held too long. After, an older man with careful hair and careful words waited until the line thinned. I run a high school, he said. Every year, a student loses work to a prank. Can we print your steps and hang them in every art room? I said yes. He shook my hand with both of his and left with a folder thick with nouns. Back upstairs, the bakery sent the cat, no note. Just that slow blink through the window. I blinked back like a citizen of his small country. Then Nor called. We got letters, she said, voice bright and tired. Some from people in your corner, some from people demanding we platform your husband for balance. Balance is a scale for weight, I said. Not a seesaw for feelings. Exactly, she said. We're running a follow-up, a list of resources, 5 cities. Clinics and legal clinics readers can visit when their work is threatened at home. We'll put your studio class on it if you're game. I'm game, I said. We'll add rest is allowed at the top. We'll add it, she said. How are you? Good, I said, truthfully. Busy, on purpose. I ordered more binders, more dividers. More coins for scale from a novelty shop because the bank thought I was weird when I asked for 70 quarters in coin rolls. I stamped each kit with a small rubber seal Omar printed for me, hold. The ink bled a little and I liked it, the way a heart shows in a thin shirt. The reversal I didn't plan for came at 3. In the form of a gallery email addressed to both of us. The subject line read, Joint Opportunity, Healing Performance Proposal. They wanted us to stand on stage under hot lights and rebuild a photo together, live, in front of an audience. With a host asking honest questions. The fee was large. The invite was syrup. They wrote, we believe in closure as content. They CC'd a sponsor who sells water that costs more than bread. I stared at the screen long enough to feel the old ache try to put on fresh clothes. Then I wrote one sentence back, no. I added 8 words, closure doesn't need cameras, and neither do we. I CC'd Aunt Lila so the refusal would live in a folder with the bright stamp of a sent date. 10 minutes later, the gallery replied, we respect your decision. Please let us know if you change your mind. I won't. I flagged the message for my next column. Underline, if they try to rent your healing. Raise your rate to infinity. Evening leaned in and brought the courthouse copy to my inbox, final order scanned, stamps crisp. My name and the case number like the spine of a book that will not lie. I printed it and slid it into the red binder on my shelf labeled law. I slid a second copy into a plastic sleeve and taped it to the inside of my studio closet door, where my jackets hang like small shields. The act felt like folding a map and placing it in my pocket. At 6, class began. The bus driver's son returned with a friend who wore a heavy sweatshirt despite the heat and kept his eyes on the floor. He didn't speak until I showed how to photograph a sketch against a clean wall with the coin beside it. A coin makes it look real, he said. Amazed that a crash of metal on a table could become proof with one click. We titled his drawing Headlight. He smiled once, private. Like lifting a corner of a tarp to check if something survived under it. Halfway through, the door opened and my mother-in-law stepped in again. This time with 2 choir ladies holding sheet music. The older one said, we heard the claws. They sat in the back, heads bent. And dated the black dots the way kids date their summer pages. After class, she cleared her throat and said, I told him to stop filming. I nodded. Not a truce, but a tiny bridge over a creek we could both hear but didn't need to cross tonight. When the room emptied, I swept the floor because floors ask and I like to answer. A shadow slid across the door window. He stood there, no crew, no script, no mother. He lifted his hand as if to knock, then dropped it. I opened the door the width of the chain. He looked past me at the cover, at the binders. At the cat yawning on the sill like an old judge. They demoted me, he said, voice steady, like a man naming a storm on the radio. I sit in ethics training 3 hours a week, and I have to send out the memo with the clause. My name is on it. That is a good job, I said. It feels like punishment, he said. It feels like a mirror, I said. Mirrors are not soft. They're true. He looked at the floor, then at me. Do you hate me? He asked, a boy question in a grown mouth. No, I said. I built a room where your choices can't reach. That's different. He nodded as if he had never heard that grammar before. He put something on the mat, a small box, plain. What is it? I asked. Negatives, he said. From a camera you gave me in year 1. I found them in a drawer. I didn't burn everything. His eyes flinched at his own word. Maybe you can make a contact sheet. I set the chain and opened the door fully, took the box, set it on the table. Thank you, I said. Year 1 mattered. It just didn't get to write the end. Can I, he began, then didn't. He put his hand against the doorframe, the same spot he'd touched last time. Like he was measuring if the tree had grown. I'm learning how to be quiet, he said, and it sounded almost like a prayer. Good, I said. Send yourself a memo. He smiled, small, and left. I didn't watch him go. I lifted the lid. A grid of film held tiny ghosts, us with rented bikes. A street parade that lost its music but kept its joy, a loaf of bread under a paper bag's shadow that looked like a hill at sunset. I made a contact sheet, not to post, not to share, just to know the shape of a time that carried me here and did not own me. Night folded into the windows. The bakery clanged pans like bells. I set water to boil. Then sat on the floor with my back to the wall and the cover watching over me. I pressed my palm to the wood and felt the drumbeat of the city through my bones, bus air brakes, footfalls, laughter, a bicycle chain, a distant siren. A neighbor's radio leaking a love song out the window for anyone to borrow. I thought about the first night again, the match, the lid, the ash, the line. The room that learned my voice. Then I thought about this night, the binder, the clause, the boy with the coin, the mother labeling music. The man at my door with a box not on fire. Revenge had become a rope I no longer needed to hold tight. Policy held me. Practice held me. Proof held me. Peace didn't sit in a throne. It wore an apron and stamped dates and turned off the lights when the class ended. Before sleep, I wrote my next column's closing line. If someone tells you destruction will make you new, tell them dates make you last. I closed the notebook, breathed like a bus. Slow in, slow out, and let the room go dim. It didn't feel empty. It felt stored, the kind of fullness that waits quietly on a shelf, labeled in clear letters. Ready to be found by the right hands at the right time. The week after he left that small box on my mat, the city shifted from early spring to sure spring. Trees dressed the sidewalks in green that felt like new pages. The bakery opened its front window and the smell of sugar walked up my stairs without knocking. I laid the negatives he'd found on the light table and made a contact sheet, not to share but to learn what still lived. In frame 24. Year 1 stared back at me, 2 bikes leaned together like they had already decided to be kind. I labeled the sheet with a date. I slid it into a sleeve. Kept did not mean clung to. It meant named. The museum asked me to come early on Saturday. They wanted to check the wall text once more. In the side gallery, my 2 prints hung with a space between them big enough for a person to breathe. Below, the small card carried the new clause in a font you could read from a few steps away: no alteration or destruction of the artist's work without written consent. Seeing those words under my picture felt like hearing a song I wrote, sung by a choir I didn't have to conduct. I touched the wall with 2 fingers. The way you touch a railing you trust. People arrived with the soft sound of good shoes. A man in a work vest paused and nodded like he did at a level beam. A teacher took a photo of the card for her classroom. The registrar stood near the door, watching with a face that held pride the way a frame holds glass: quiet, firm, necessary. "We added your resource list to our kids' tours," she whispered. "Dates and titles right after color and line." I smiled. "Teach them the boring first," I said. "It saves lives later." Nurse slipped in, hair up, eyes bright, a lemon pin on her jacket like a private joke we share. She pressed a hand to my arm. "You good?" she asked. "I am," I said. She scanned the room and grinned. "They're reading the clause more than the captions," she said. "Good." We stood and watched a small boy tilt his head at the bus window photo like he was trying to see who was on the other side. His mother leaned down and read the clause out loud, soft. He repeated consent like a new word in his mouth, then said, "Okay, because some rules taste right the first time." At noon, I ducked into the quiet office to check my phone before the talk. A new email waited from his company's compliance team, copied to him, to HR, to legal, and to a group called training. "Your cover and clause have been incorporated into internal policy. All external content will require written proof of consent. Destruction of creative material is a terminable offense. No signature flourish. Just ink." The very show he tried to make out of my work had turned into the door that closed on his favorite trick. Poetic irony does not need to shout. It needs a stamp. On my way back to the gallery, my phone buzzed again. "Aunt Lila, final hearing set for next month. We have time. We have dates." I breathed like a bus, slow in, slow out, and tucked the phone away. I stepped back into the room of glass and paper and people. And for once the air felt easy. After the talk, a woman waited with a small envelope. Her hands shook. "I think I know your cracked helmet kid," she said. Voice careful. "He lives on my block now. He paints boards behind the bodega. He carries a binder." She smiled through that last part like it surprised her mouth. "He said a lady with quiet eyes taught him to name his work." I felt my throat tighten the good way. "Tell him the clause on this wall belongs to him, too," I said. "Tell him he can borrow it any time." I walked home by habit. Down the block where the bus sighs, past a barber who brushes a chair until it gleams. Past a stack of cardboard outside the laundromat that smelled like steam and soap. In the studio, the cat sat on the sill with his eyes almost closed, as if he was listening to the radiator tell an old story. I set my bag down and opened my notebook to the page where I write the lines that save me. I added one: paper outlives a pose. I spent the afternoon building something small that felt big: hold grants. $50 checks to cover registration fees, lockboxes, binder kits, a month of storage. A coin jar for scale. I put a slice of the insurance money there, column by column. I asked Nor to run a small box under my next piece: micro grants available. No essay, no stage, just a receipt. I printed the simple form: name, date, what you need, where to send. Small lines. Big floodgates. At dusk, my mother-in-law knocked with a folder of choir music and 2 women I'd met in class. They carried a plastic tub with hymns, spring written on tape that had learned to give up. "We're ready to do it right," she said. No edge. No blade. We spread the pages on the table. We labeled and dated. We made a list that felt like both a fence and a hug. She watched my hands for a while, then said, "I told him I was wrong about the party." Her mouth trembled and steadied. "I told him to apologize without a camera." I nodded and slid the finished index across to her. She held it like a hymn. After they left, silence folded itself around the room again. I made tea and opened the little box he'd brought last week. I took 2 negatives to the enlarger and made test strips. I did not chase legend. I chased tone. I watched the paper change in the tray, gray blooming into picture, the way dawn decides to commit. I hung the print to dry and sat on the floor under it. Year 1, 2 bikes, 1 curb. It no longer hurt. It held. That was the difference. The next morning the corner store clerk waved me over as I passed. "She came," he said, grinning. "Tiny lady, big voice. Bought your magazine for the school." He pointed to a stack of blank notebooks with dates stamped at the top of each page. "Customers keep asking for these," he said. I told the distributor. We laughed. Sometimes policy looks like a cheap line on a cheap spiral. That line is a kind of law, too. At noon, the gallery that wanted closure as content wrote again, angling the bait in a different direction. "We've doubled the fee and secured TV interest." I answered with 2 words, "No." Indefinitely. I CC'd Aunt Lila and archived the thread. Then I wrote my next column, titled "Rest is Allowed." I kept the sentences short on purpose. I told readers how to schedule 1 day a month where nothing new is made and everything old is labeled "rest as file," "rest as care," "rest as maintenance." I wrote, "You don't have to set yourself on fire to prove you can stand heat. Put your name on the page and put the page in a sleeve. That is enough." Midweek, the courthouse sent certified copies of the interim order. I slid one under the studio mat for a day when my future self might need to feel protected before her coffee. The other I taped inside my closet door under the first, 2 layers, 2 spines. I looked at them and felt the room get heavier in the good way, the way a boat gets safer with ballast. He texted once, "They want me to speak at ethics training about what not to do." I hate it. I typed and erased 3 answers. I settled on one, "Say the clause out loud." Twice. He replied, "They put your line on the slide." I didn't answer. Not every door needs another knock. The following Saturday, I ran the first Holt Grant Day. People came in quiet, left with binders, forms, lockboxes. And that look I had learned how to protect, a face exhaling as if a heavy hand had finally lifted from their chest. A teenager in a hoodie took a kit and whispered, "Is it weird if I register poems?" "No," I said. "Words need armor." 2. He smiled like it was okay to be seen for a second. A dancer wrote her stage name on the form with a flourish and said, "No one gets to rename me in a contract again." A carpenter took 2 coins for scale and laughed. "I'll keep one in the truck," he said. One in my pocket. We took a group photo of hands holding binders. No faces. The image looked like a promise. Late that night, when the room had cooled and the city sounded like a big animal sleeping, a message arrived from a number I didn't recognize. "I watched your museum talk from a link someone sent." I was the boy with the cracked helmet. My aunt raised me. I work nights and paint boards on weekends. Thanks for keeping my picture. I keep my stuff now. I stared at the words until they blurred into light. I wrote back, "I'm glad you're here. If you want a print, I'll make one for you. No charge. Just a date." He sent a single word, "Deal." I turned off the lamp and sat on the rug with my back to the wall. The cover on the tape had started to curl again. I smoothed it with my thumb and left it a little imperfect on purpose. I thought about scale, the match he loved, the cover that answered, the clause under glass, the binder on a kid's lap, the coin beside a drawing. The little seal that said hold. None of it was loud. All of it was strong. Revenge had melted into something softer but harder to move, rules, schedules, habits. My grief didn't roar anymore. It filed. It stamped. It ended on time. Outside, a bus sighed and knelt. Inside, the kettle clicked. I poured hot water over a tea bag and watched the steam rise like a thin ghost, then vanish. I took one last note before sleep. In a hand that no longer shook, peace is not empty. It is full of dates. Then I slept because I had work tomorrow. And the work was to help strangers turn their own lives into proof that would outlast anyone else's pose. Press week felt like weather, loud in town, quiet in my head. I woke early. Wrote my list in block letters, final hearing, grant emails, filmed the cracked helmet print for him, rest, and walked to the studio under a sky that looked washed and wrung. The cat on the roof yawned at me like a door that doesn't lock. I saluted. He blinked, unimpressed. It centered me more than coffee. The final hearing sat at 10. Aunt Lila met me at the courthouse steps with a thermos of mint tea and a folder that looked small because it was light with only what mattered. "We don't bring stories," she said. "We bring dates." I sipped, breathed like a bus, slow in, slow out, and followed her inside. The room felt different this time. Fewer people. Less edge. The judge wore the same calm. She opened with our case number and asked if the parties had reviewed the proposed order. We had. Lila had sharpened it like a pencil, no extra varnish. Just point, permanent injunction against destruction or alteration of my work by him or anyone acting for him, clear division of property, my negatives, drives. And binders solely mine, the house to be sold or bought out by him within 6 months, temporary support to ease the move, a line that made my lungs loosen, the consent clause baked into any joint asset, no use of my name, image, or work without written permission. The order ended with a sentence the judge had added in her own hand, end on time. His lawyer cleared his throat. "We request one amendment," he said. "My client would like the right to purchase one archival print, a keepsake, at fair market value." I looked at him, then at the judge. She raised an eyebrow, amused by how small and dangerous a word like keepsake can be. Aunt Lila whispered, "Your call." I thought about year one. I thought about the box he'd left, little ghosts on film. I thought about the boy with the cracked helmet and his text, deal. I thought about the hands in class holding binders. "He can buy a print," I said. "Not of the Fire series. Not of us. Of the bus at dawn. Full price. Proceeds go to the Holt grants. He gets a receipt like anyone." I kept my voice flat, like a ruler. His mother flinched at full price. He glanced at the table, embarrassed and grateful at once. The judge wrote it down. "Fair," she said. We moved through the rest like adults in a kitchen, who keeps the bowls, who takes the knives, who pays which bill for which month. It was dull as drywall in places. That was how I knew we were building something that would hold. At the end, the judge looked at him. "Do you understand the consent clause?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes." "Say it," she said. He swallowed. "No alteration or destruction of her work without written consent," he said, voice low. "Again," she said. He repeated it, louder. The sentence hung in the air like a level beam. I wrote it on my palm with my finger, invisible ink, just to feel it twice. The judge signed. Stamps fell like soft hammers. We stood. It was over, not like a movie, no big swell. More like a train that rolled into a station and sighed. Outside. On the steps, I exhaled in a way that made me feel taller. Lila hugged me quick, then held my shoulders. "You kept the nouns," she said. "You're free." He waited near the bottom with his hands in his pockets, not blocking the path. His mother stood a few feet away, clutching her folder like a hymn book. He looked up at me and nodded. "Thank you for the print," he said. "You're paying the grant," I said. "I know," he said. "That's the part I like." He surprised himself. So did I. We parted with no ceremony. He walked east. I walked west. The city took us both, the way it always does. Back at the studio, I opened the window and let air move the blue tape on the cover. I pulled the bus at dawn negative from its sleeve, set it in the enlarger, and let light pour through history onto new paper. In the tray, the image surfaced slow, the way dawn does its job, whether anyone watches or not. I made 2 prints. One for him, stamped "Hold Grant" on the back, priced at full. One for the boy with the cracked helmet, priced at $0. The price we give people who helped us write the rules by just living through the worst part and sending a text. Nor called at noon. "We're running your rest is a loud piece tomorrow," she said. "I love the part where you tell people to set a calendar reminder for joy." "Joy needs schedules," I said. "It wanders off otherwise." "We also got a letter," she added. "From a network. They want to option your story." She let the sentence hang. "No," I said. Instinct before thought. "They said they'd cast someone to play you," she teased. "They can cast a binder," I said. "And a bus. Those 2 carry the plot." She laughed. "I told them you don't do stages." "Tell them I sell templates," I said. "License a clause." "Done," she said. "You good?" "I am," I said. "Busy. Resting at 4. "Look at you," she said. "Keeping your own order." At 2, I ran the first hold office hours, no class, no talk. Just a sign, "Open table. Bring your mess." People came all afternoon. A baker with butter on her cheek. A teenager with a flash drive named Stuff. A muralist with paint on his keys. A poet with her notebook tied shut with a ribbon because her boyfriend had a way of calling inspiration an emergency. We opened. We filed. We laughed at good lines. We threw out bad contracts. We didn't film a thing. During a lull, my mother-in-law slipped in, alone. She held a small, battered album. "Our family," she said. "No dates." We sat. We labeled. She wrote "Wedding, 1979" with a hand that studied as the numbers made sense. Halfway through, she put down the pen. "He called," she said. Meaning her son. "He said the clause in training had your name on it in the draft. He took it off because he said policy should be bigger than a person." She looked at me like a mother who finally saw her child do something correct in a quiet room. "He got one thing right," she added. "He did," I said. She traced a photo where he was 8 and furious at a cake that had the wrong superhero. "We didn't teach him about keeping," she said. "We taught him about winning." "I am sorry." I nodded. "We learn late," I said. "We still learn." She wiped her eye and smiled at the page. "I joined your grant," she said. "Small monthly. From my choir envelope." "Thank you," I said. She patted my hand like a benediction and left with the album that finally fit right in her arms. At 3. The boy with the cracked helmet, now a man with paint under his nails and a binder under his arm, came by for the print. He wore a clean shirt and the caution of someone who has learned to step around glass without losing his foot. I handed him the envelope. He opened it, saw himself in the grayscale light of a past that didn't own him, and smiled like a person stepping into a room that had always been his. "You got the light right," he said, soft. "You brought it," I said. I only caught it. He held the second envelope. The invoice marked paid by Grant and shook his head. You didn't have to. You already paid, I said. By surviving in public. He nodded. He tapped the binder on his arm. I'm teaching 2 kids behind the bodega how to label, he said. They think I'm corny. I don't care. Tell them corny is a kind of armor, I said. He laughed, promised to send a shot of the boards with coins for scale. And left with his picture. At 4, I did my own rule. I turned off the lamp. I sat on the floor, back to the wall. I rested. It felt like a skill, not a luxury. The room hummed the safe hum, fridge, traffic, someone humming 2 floors down. The cat slept with one eye open because that's what cats do when the world is bigger than them and they are okay anyway. When I lifted my head, the sun had edged down the brick across the alley. I made tea, wrote Grant checks, and stamped them hold. I put one in an envelope addressed to the teenager with the flash drive named Stuff. I wrote on the flap, rename the folder. It matters. I tucked another into an envelope for the poet with the ribbon. Register your name. I smiled at my own bossiness and sealed the edges firm. At dusk. He texted, invoice for the print? I sent it, full price, receipt attached, note, proceeds to hold Grants. He replied, paid. Then, thank you. No camera. No pitch. A quiet, usable sentence. It wasn't redemption. It was repair in one small place. Sometimes that's what the day can hold. I pinned a copy of the order beside the cover, 2 guardians in paper form. I wrote my next column's opening, rest is allowed. And invoices are love letters to your future self. I smiled at my own joke because humor is a handle you can hold when rules feel heavy. Before I left, I turned to the cover and said out loud, because some things deserve voice, you brought them back. Not just the pictures. The me who took them. The me who titles and dates and doesn't apologize for being precise. The me who teaches other hands to keep what is theirs without burning anything down to prove it. On the walk home, the corner store clerk was taping up the new sign, hold kits in stock. He winked. I bought milk in a roll and 1 cheap notebook with dates stamped at the top of each page. I would give it to someone tomorrow, a kid at the bus stop, a dancer at the park, a man who fixes chairs. I carried it like a small lantern. The city breathed around me, buses kneeling, doors whooshing, shoes on pavement, a radio from somewhere singing a song about staying. Back at my place. I slid the bolt and set the bag on the counter. I leaned against the sink and let my bones say thank you to the room. Revenge had begun as a plan with teeth. It had become policy with hands. It had ended, not with a headline, but with a clause on a wall. A grant in an envelope, a binder on a lap, a boy-turned-man carrying a picture home. Peace did not feel like empty. It felt like plenty, of dates, of names. Of rules that didn't hurt, of doors that opened and closed on time. I turned off the light. The studio across town glowed in my mind like a clean page. The bus sighed outside. The city kept time. And I slept, because tomorrow there would be more to hold, and I had 2 hands that knew how. A week later I woke to a message flood that looked like a broken pipe, alerts, tags, DMs, all saying the same thing, is this yours? A reseller account had posted found prints of my bus series, priced cheap, captions full of winks, rescued art. The photos were mine, scanned ugly, edges warped. Signatures cloned with a pixelated hand. The page had thousands of followers and a bio that said, we save culture from clutter. I made coffee without rushing my heart. I breathed like a bus, slow in, slow out, then opened my folder labeled takedown. Inside lived the steps Aunt Lila had written like a spell, URLs, screenshots, timestamps. Registration numbers, the DMCA template with my name already in the right places. I filed with the platform, attached the letters from the Library of Congress. Included a scan of the consent clause from the museum wall just because irony is a vitamin. I CC'd the registrar, Noor, and my own quiet inbox called proof. Then I walked downstairs to the bakery because waiting goes better with butter. The clerk slid me an extra roll for legal courage. At the corner table, a college kid with a design textbook asked me if the takedown would work. Yes, I said, with the calm that comes from dates. And even if it doesn't today, it will tomorrow. Paper outlasts pose. Back upstairs, the platform sent the first reply, "We have removed the content pending counter notice." I thanked the invisible worker behind the screen in my head. In the same minute, the reseller posted a story calling me a gatekeeper. My phone pulsed as strangers lectured me about freedom from behind profile pictures of sunsets. I didn't answer. I wrote instead 3 paragraphs for my next column about how free often means free for someone else to take. Noor messaged, "Run it this week." I typed, "Run it tonight." She answered, "You good?" I was. The door knocked once. When I opened it, a woman stood there with a manila envelope and eyes that had practiced not crying. "I'm Mara's cousin," she said. "I used to work at a print lab." She set the envelope on my table, hands shaking a little. "My boss told us to rescue unclaimed prints and sell them online." He used that word. Rescue. He kept a box marked orphans. "I saw your series in there. Months ago." I took photos, because it felt wrong. Inside the envelope, phone pics of the lab's back room, metal shelves, the orphan box. Corners of other people's lives leaning on each other for balance. One image showed my boss window proof. My signature scratched out with a Sharpie and then re-signed by a stranger's hand. Heat crawled under my skin and then cooled when it met my spine of dates. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, small as a held breath. "Breathe," I said. "Then write what you know." I dialed Aunt Lila. She arrived with mint tea and a legal pad, like a saint of small order. We took a statement. We logged names. We made a list: contact the lab's parent company, file complaint with the state's consumer office, alert other artists who might be in the box. We wrote down 3 clinics that would help if the woman needed work after this. We gave her the first Holt grant check I had set aside for a whistleblower I didn't know I'd meet. She cried then, without mess. "I'm not brave," she said. "I'm tired." "Tired people make good rules," I said. "They don't have energy for lies." By noon, the lab's corporate office had an email with 10 attachments. We cited the registrations, the museum clause, the DMCA takedowns, the photos of the orphan box. We CC'd the state. We CC'd a reporter Noor trusted who writes about quiet theft. An hour later, corporate replied with legal spin, "We are investigating." 2 hours after that, perhaps when someone with a spine read our exhibits, a second email came, "We have terminated the manager responsible and are auditing all locations. We will return or compensate any artist whose work was misused. Please accept our apology." It was not poetry. It was policy. The good kind. At 2, I taught office hours. The bus driver's son arrived with a skinny boy whose hoodie swallowed his ears. The new kid held a lirio of sketches. All ships with sails made of music notes. "My stepdad tosses anything he thinks is childish," he muttered. We dated, titled, photographed, filed. We slid his work into a binder that clicked shut like a safe. He touched the tabs twice just to feel them hold. "Feels adult," he said, grin half buried. Midway through, the door opened. My husband's old coworker, the one who'd filmed everything, stood hovering, a paper bag in his hand. "I brought you something," he said. Not meeting my eyes. Inside, the steel drum receipt. Rental contract. Credit card slip with my husband's signature big as his dream. No one told me to, the man said. I just thought you should have it. He looked like a person clearing a small debt with himself. Thanks, I said. I keep receipts. He almost smiled at the line. Then left, lighter by ounces, which matter. The platform wrote back again, reseller account suspended. The rescued art hashtag died a little. In its place, a handful of artists posted their binders, coins for scale against canvases, contracts with the bad lines crossed out in fat marker. Nor messaged, your column is live, freedom is not their word for you. She attached a photo of a whiteboard at a high school where a teacher had written my steps in bad marker, date, name, backup, register, insure, consent. Someone had drawn a coin in the corner with a smiley face. I laughed without apology. Around 4. The museum registrar sent a note, we're adding a line to wall labels, artists retain the right to be asked first. I wrote it in my net of lines notebook. Say it twice in a room. At 5, a storm rolled in with the suddenness this city loves, a slap of rain, a smear of dark. A street shining like a fresh plate. I closed the window and turned on the safe lights. The cat shot me a look that said, obviously. I laid the cracked helmet print on the table and filmed a short, quiet video for him, the man he became, not the boy he was in it. I didn't talk. I just wrote the title under the edge in pencil, slow, so he could see the hand that kept him. I texted, it's ready. Pick up Friday. No cameras. He answered, Friday. No cameras. We were learning. Evening brought my mother-in-law and 2 choir ladies again, this time with a thumb drive. We recorded practice, she said. I want to label the files. We named each track with date, song, version, director. I made them a template. The eldest pulled me close before she left. Your rule saved us a fight, she confessed. A deacon wanted to post a clip without asking. I said, we have a clause. He said, since when? I said, since we wrote it. He sat down. We laughed like teenagers who got away with something good. When the door shut and the room exhaled, I let myself sag against the wall for a minute. The day felt heavy but right, like carrying chairs for a gathering that deserved to happen. My phone buzzed one more time, Tomas the adjuster. FYI, company training now includes artist-writer basics. Also, my daughter taped your rest is allowed page to her closet door. She says she schedules joy now. I typed, same. I poured tea and sat with my joy at 4 on the dot, even if it was 5:30. Schedules bend. They don't break. The reversal I didn't expect came with the 9 p.m. news. The lab scandal had turned citywide. The reporter we CC'd had done his work, interviews, images. The orphan boxes countrywide. The network cut to a studio where a panel of people who used to love hot takes tried to say something useful. A woman in glasses said, we have to stop pretending that art belongs to whoever holds it. It belongs to whoever made it until they say otherwise. On the crawl at the bottom, my clause ran, no alteration or destruction without written consent. Watching it move under people's mouths felt like watching the river move while a bridge is built over it. Not flashy. Necessary. I turned off the TV. I wrote 2 checks, one to the woman from the lab to bridge her weeks while she found a better job, one to the high school teacher for binder kits. I stamped them hold. I cleaned the table. I set out 10 fresh coins. I wrote tomorrow's list, lab follow-up, grant mail, print pickup. Rest, and underlined rest twice because I am my own student. Before bed, I opened the little box of year 1 negatives. I chose a frame I hadn't noticed before, his hand steadying my bike seat just out of kindness, no pose, no eyes on him. I made a small print and taped it inside my closet next to the order and the cover. Not to keep him. To keep the idea that kindness existed once. And could exist again, not as a stage but as a small, daily repair. I wrote under it in pencil, kind does not equal keep. I lay on the rug. The storm now a soft drum on the glass, the cat a heap of judge on the sill. The city breathed. The buses rested like beasts with good jobs. My bones lined up with the floorboards like they were agreeing on something simple. Revenge had been the hook, policy was the song. And the song had become a lullaby I could live with, dates, names, receipts, quiet applause from a room that didn't need to film itself to feel real. I slept. Tomorrow. Kids would bring in drawings with coins, a baker would ask me to label a new pastry recipe like it was a painting. A deacon would sit down because a choir lady said clause, a man would pick up a print with no cameras. A lab would audit boxes called orphan and rename them return. And I would rest at 4, because I had written it down. Friday came like a clean page. I wrote my list in block letters, print pickup, lab follow-up, school binders, rest, and took the bus to the studio with the window fogging just enough to make the city look soft. The bakery door was propped open. Sugar walked up the stairs ahead of me. The cat on the roof gave me half a blink, which counted as respect in his country. I laid the bus at dawn print in a flat box with tissue like snow and slipped the invoice inside, paid, hold grants. I added a small card, 6 words only, say the clause twice each day. I set the box on the table and breathed like a bus, slow in, slow out, until my pulse matched the radiator. He arrived on time. No crew. No mother. No speech. He stood in the doorway as if the wood might judge him. It didn't. I slid the chain, opened the door, and nodded at the box. Thank you, he said, voice even. He lifted the lid a little, looked. Then closed it like a person handling a folded flag. He passed me an envelope, receipt copy, bank slip, not a single stray word. I put the card on the back, I said. Read it daily. It helps. I started, he said, a small admission that felt like a room with a light on. They made me say it in training. I say it at home now, too. Good, I said. Say it for things that are not mine. He shifted. Then reached into his coat and pulled out a narrow notebook. The cover was plain. Date was stamped at the top. He handed it to me like a peace offering from a small country. We keep one by the door, he said. I label the stuff I used to borrow. I leave it there. I ask. Keep the notebook, I said. Keep the asking. I slid it back. He nodded. Lifted the box, and held my eyes long enough to make a sentence without a noun. I won't say sorry again, he said. I'll just do less harm. That's the only kind that holds, I said. He smiled once, quick, the way people do when their mouth remembers before their mind. Then left without filming his exit. The stairs sighed. The door downstairs clicked. The building stayed itself. I sat a moment with the quiet, then opened my email. The lab's parent company had sent a list, 200 artists they believed were in orphan boxes citywide. Names, emails, what they planned to return. How they would pay if they could not. They asked me to share with any clinics I trusted. I passed it to Noor, the registrar, and Aunt Lila. We'll help, Noor wrote back. We'll host a page, return what isn't yours. At 11, the high school teacher arrived with a cardboard crate and 2 students in hoodies. We want to set up an evidence wall in the art room, he said, proud and shy. Not for police. For pride. Copies of titles, dates, coins for scale. The clause in big letters. He looked at me like he was asking permission to be practical. Yes, I said. Make it loud. And put a binder on the desk where kids can sign their work like a book at a wedding, witness and date. We spread the crate on the table, sketchbooks, water-stained canvases. A zine stapled crooked. The girl with chipped black polish held up a drawing of a bus stop with faces made of leaves. My uncle tore up the first one, she said. Said it looked like trash trees. She shrugged, then met my eye. I made it again. I like it more. We titled it Trash Trees Don't Burn and dated it with a line that made my chest feel useful. At noon, I walked the block with the teacher to the corner store. The clerk had set a milk crate by the door with a hand-lettered sign, free date notebooks, sponsored by neighbors. He winked. The choir ladies paid for the first batch, he said. We laughed. The world did not turn holy. It clicked into place like shelves done right. Back upstairs. Nor called. We're putting together a little town hall with the museum, she said. No stage. Just chairs. Topic, ask first. Will you sit in the back row and answer questions about forms? I will sit in the back row and pass out pens, I said. Perfect, she said. Also, your freedom is not their word for you. Peace is making people mad in a useful way. The comments are a bonfire, but the letters to editors are clean. I'm sending you the good ones, not the ones that try to rename theft. Send the ones with nouns, I said. 2:00 brought a text from Tomas, heads up. Our company is rolling out a creative work writer option. Your case is the internal example. Names removed. Proof kept. I sent back a lemon and a gavel. He replied with a coin. Our small language felt like a handshake I didn't have to break. At 3. A young mother pushed the door with her hip and a stroller wheel squealed like a note on the wrong string. She held a grocery bag of Polaroids, kids on swings. A birthday cake that leaned. The landlord says I can't hang frames, she whispered, as if rules might hear and punish her. Can I register pictures of my children? Her eyes dared me to say no. Yes, I said. You can register what you made with your hands and your time. Even if it's a cake or a braid in hair. We made a list. We took photos of the photos for the record. We put her name on the line that said author and watched her shoulders rise and drop like a tide corrected. Feels like armor, she said. Soft armor. I nodded. That's the kind that moves with you. At 4, I obeyed my rule. I turned off the lamp, sat on the floor, and did not make anything. I drank water. I wrote one sentence, rest is allowed. I underlined it twice and smiled at myself for becoming the kind of person who keeps a promise to a page. After rest, I checked the grant inbox. 50 messages. I read each one, because attention is part of the money. A welder wanted a lockbox for sketches of gates he bent on weekends. A seamstress wanted dividers for a binder of patterns. A barber asked if a contract could have a no-filming line for his chair. He liked to talk to people in private. Yes, I wrote, and attached a template. A kid from the skate park asked if he could register a deck he painted. Yes, I wrote. Title it. Date it. Photograph it with a coin. Smile once. As dusk leaned, the museum registrar sent a small photo that pushed a sound out of my throat I almost didn't recognize as joy, a wall label in the children's gallery with big letters, ask first, and under it. Smaller lines, date it. Name it. Keep it, beside a table of crayons and paper. They take the paper home, she wrote. They whisper ask first on the stairs. I stood by the window and let the idea settle, a room where kids learn consent with crayons before they ever hand someone a heart. Evening brought one more knock. Mara slipped in, hair undone, smiled doing that sideways thing it does when she is proud and doesn't want to spook it. You have mail, she said, holding a thick envelope. Inside, a letter on his company's heavy stock. We appreciate your contributions to a safer creative ecosystem. Enclosed. A donation to the Holt grants in recognition of policy improvements adopted this quarter. The check was not small. The irony was exact. The tool he had used, brand budgets, now watered the garden he once wanted to strip for parts. I took a photo of the check for records and slipped it into the grant account. Square beats shiny, I said. Mara grinned. Put that on a shirt, she said. I'll wear it to church. We sat on the floor and ate bakery rolls like girls who used to split fries after school and planned lives that did not require applause. How's your aunt? Mara asked. Labeling people's divorces with dates, I said. She says it helps them breathe. How are you? She asked. Rested, I said. And heard the truth as it left my mouth. She nodded, happy like the kind of friend who never asked me to be a stage. Before bed, I opened the little box of year 1 negatives one more time. I didn't print anything. I just looked. Then closed the lid and set it on a high shelf, not a shrine, not a trap. Kept. Dated on the side in my square hand. I checked the order taped inside the closet, the cover on the wall, the claws under glass in my mind. I turned off the lights and listened to the building hum. The cat on the roof thumped once, settling. A bus sighed and knelt. I lay on the rug with my palms on the floorboards. The revenge that had once felt like a sharp thing now felt like a clean ledger. Debits closed. Credits named. A balance that left room for bread, for binders, for chairs that didn't wobble, for kids who whispered ask first on museum stairs. For a man who carried a print home with no cameras and a card that told him to say the right sentence twice. Peace didn't ring like a bell. It landed like paper in a file drawer, quiet and sure, ready to be found when someone needed to prove that what they made was real, and that they were. 2. The town hall didn't have a stage, just a circle of chairs under lights that knew how to stay out of the way. A cardboard sign taped to the door read "Ask First" in thick black marker. I arrived early with a tote of pens, 3 stacks of Holt kits, and a thermos of tea. Nor paced the back row like a conductor who hated batons and loved silence. The museum registrar laid out forms on a long table, registration basics, consent templates, a sample writer that said in plain type, "No alteration or destruction without written consent." I ran my fingers over the paper. It felt like a lock clicking shut in the right direction. People filtered in, artists with paint under their nails, a baker in a flour-dusted apron, a bus driver in uniform, 2 teenagers with skateboards under their arms, a librarian with a canvas tote that sighed with effort, a lawyer with kind shoes, 3 choir ladies. My mother-in-law among them, holding a folder that looked heavier than last time. A camera crew from his company hovered by the door and then left. As if the claws had pushed them back without a word. We began with breath. Nor asked everyone to close their eyes, inhale, exhale, listen to their own pace. "We are not here to perform harm," she said. "We are here to write rules that make harm less profitable." Heads nodded, a room of metronomes finding the same beat. Then she sat, front row, not front of room, and opened the floor. A teenager spoke first, voice small but certain. "My brother keeps posting my art without asking. He says he's promoting me. I don't want that kind of attention." She held her board like a shield. I passed her a consent template. "Give him this," I said. "If he loves you, he'll sign that he will ask." She smiled like a door unlatching. The librarian raised a hand. "Our community board wants to post storytime photos. We want to show joy. We also need to keep kids safe." The registrar slid over a 2-line form. "We ask. You say yes or no. We obey." The librarian pressed her lips together and nodded. "Joy with rules," she said. "Yes." A baker asked if a recipe could be copyrighted. The list of ingredients, no, I said. Your notes, your images, your stories around it, yes. Register your words. Photograph your process. Title it like you title a painting. She laughed and wrote dough. Light on a napkin, dated it, then tucked it into her apron like a spell. Halfway through, my mother-in-law stood, hands quiet at her sides. Our church has a new media team, she said, voice steady. They want to film solos without asking. They say God likes views. A ripple of weary laughter. I slid a template down the row. Tell them God likes consent, I said. She smiled, one of those small, deep smiles that mean more than any applause, and sat with the claws under her fingers. Nor called for a 5-minute stretch. People stood, shook out hands made for work, and wandered to the table. Coins for scale clinked as kids pocketed them like talismans. I refilled the pen cup. The cat from my roof had no way in. But I swear I felt his disapproval for any sentence that ran longer than it had to. I shortened one template by 2 words. Felt better. When we sat again, I told my part, not the fire this time, not the ash. Just the map. I learned how to keep, I said. Dates, titles, backups, a writer. I learned I could ask first and teach others to ask. I learned that no is a sentence. And show me your consent is a chorus. I could feel the line settle in the room like a low note. Questions spilled in, tidy and messy. A photographer's assistant asked about sharing behind-the-scenes clips. Ask and label, I said. If consent changes, delete. A barber asked about phones in his chair. A sign, I said. Big letters. Polite words, no filming without permission from both of us. Make consent a piece of furniture in your shop. He wrote it down as if it could anchor a mirror. A woman in a neat blazer waited until the end. I run a small agency, she said. My junior staff want to post day-in-the-life videos. Our client's work is in the background. I don't want to be a scold. I want to be right. I liked her for the second sentence. Write a policy, I said. 3 lines. No client work on personal feeds. No filming in client spaces without written consent. If you're not sure, don't post. Then say it out loud in a meeting. Twice. After, Nor hugged me quick. You good? She asked. I am, I said. The registrar pressed a stack of extra forms into my hands. For your office hours, she said. The bus driver clapped my shoulder gently, a thanks that didn't require words. My mother-in-law squeezed my hand and whispered, he said the clause in training without rolling his eyes. I squeezed back. That means it's sinking. Back in the studio. I found an envelope on the mat. No return address. Inside, a faded Polaroid, 2 bikes leaned against a curb, year 1. On the back, in his handwriting. A date and a line, kind does not equal keep. I smiled, taped it inside my closet near my own small print, and let the echo be enough.